All right, so my name is Ali Sivji, and I'm here to talk to you about contributing to open source. Before I'd like to get started, I'd like to thank Sprout for this amazing space, and also thank you, Chippy, for having me speak again. Now you guys must get tired of me, but here I am again. So, can I just get a show of hands? How many of you use open source software? Or Python meetup? Everybody, right? Awesome. Keep your hands up if you contributed to open source. Wow, it's like a third of the room. That's fantastic. Thank you, guys. We really appreciate the work you do. So hopefully for those people that didn't put their hands up, this presentation will help out a little bit and get them started. So my name is Ali Sivji. I'm a software engineer at Analyte Health. I'm also studying medical informatics at Northwestern, and I'm an open source contributor. So what is open source? Open source is free software that is released under a license. A lot of organizations have taken up this model of software delivery. Let's just do this. So famously closed source companies like Microsoft now have products like Visual Studio Code, which are released under like the MIT license. I don't really want to sound too much like Richard Stallman, but free and open source software changed the world. Open source has made it really easy to do collaboration. We can stop reinventing the wheel, and we can work together to solve complex problems. The entire Python data science ecosystem is built on top of NumPy ND arrays. Once we figured out how to store data and perform computations in these continuous memory blocks, we were able to do more interesting things and solve more interesting problems. We could also use open source software to increase developer productivity. If we have a website idea, we can pick a Python web framework and start prototyping really, really quickly. A benefit I really don't think gets talked about too much is that open source exposes the man behind the curtain. Code used to be secret and proprietary. Open source changed that. If you're ever wondering how something's done, you can just look it up. Honestly, this is something I keep learning over and over again. So why should you contribute to open source? Well, you all use Python, and you're here at Chippy, so you're part of a community. And you should contribute to open source to improve the ecosystem, make our community a little stronger. Honestly, Python changed my life. Like, I got a job I actually enjoy. It's been the first time. Like, I'm super happy. And if I can spend a few hours just giving back to Python, it's the absolute least I can do. We all know that open source software isn't perfect. Sooner or later, we're going to run into a bug. If you open up an issue, is it going to get fixed by the time you need to release your software? But we have the code in front of us, so why don't we just crack it open and submit a pull request once we're done? So my first pull request was to fix a bug. I was trying to test my website using Mongo mock. I tried to follow the documentation, but there's an exception happening, and I really couldn't figure it out. I Googled my error, looked on Stack Overflow, I still couldn't figure it out. Decided it was probably best to open up a ticket. When I was going through the stack trace, that error was just like looking me in the face. I'm like, oh, I know how to fix this. A couple hours later, I fixed it, got it working for what I wanted to do. The hard work was already done. Wrote some tests, put up a pull request, and I got merged a few weeks later. Yeah, a few weeks. People are busy, I know. But the most important thing I learned was, like, I don't really need Stack Overflow. That might be like heresy, but Stack Overflow, it's there to help us, but we can actually figure these problems out ourselves. So do the libraries you need do everything you want? For the most part, yes, they do. But there's a couple of nice features that would be nice to have. So we can open up an issue on GitHub, but is it going to be a priority for the maintainer? See the skeleton over there? We could also Google and Stack Overflow to see what kind of workarounds we could implement. Or we have the code in front of us. Why don't we just crack it open and implement it ourselves? So there's this data science library called OnGuard, and it's used to do a defensive data analysis. So you use decorator-based assertions to add invariants or add checks to your data analysis. So some examples of the assertions would be, do the columns of our data frame match what we expect them to be in terms of d-types and column names? Does a resulting data frame have a specific shape, like 4 columns, 10 rows? Do all the values in a particular column fit within an expected range? And so I really wanted to build out like a data testing pipeline library. But instead of creating a separate library, I just added this functionality to OnGuard. And so pandas is actually built in with a lot of great testing utilities for data frames. So I just connected a few dots, and it saved me the trouble of creating a new library. And now we have a library with this code out there. If you guys are interested in adding tests to data science, I highly recommend checking out OnGuard. So what are some of the benefits of contributing? So in my experience, open source has made me a lot better at debugging, at writing documentation. I'm a lot better at writing tests, and my Git skills are so much better than they were like 6 months ago. So contribution is sort of a form of deliberate practice. The more you do something, the better you'll get at it. We'll also gain experience working with other programmers and working after other programmers. Legacy software is the reality of life, so it's something we should probably get used to. If you use something in your project, you're responsible for its behavior. And the most pragmatic thing to do is to actually understand how it works by looking through the source code. I'm not going to say open source is going to get you a job, but the experience does add a lot of credibility. It shows that you have a deeper interest than just your 9 to 5. So if you have some open source experience, maybe you can stand out from the crowd. So what are just different ways to contribute? So the most obvious way, we can write some code, fix bugs, add features. If you want to learn a new code base, a really good way is to clean up the tests and clean up the code. I actually just merged a bunch of cleaning for test in pandas. I took like around, I think it was like 1,400 lines and made it into 3 separate files, went through each of the tests and made them like PyTest compatible from like unit tests. So that was a lot of fun. I mean, it wasn't that much fun, but it was good to get back. You can write documentation. Like, what project can't benefit from better documentation? You can also contribute by building a community. So write a blog post, tutorial, give a talk at a meetup. Chippy's always looking for people. Promote this project on social media. You could also become active in the project by subscribing to their mailing list, checking out their bug tracker, or answering questions on Stack Overflow. And if you like doing code review and you're good at it, there are a lot of projects that can use your help. And this is sort of the least sexy way of getting involved, but open source projects are struggling with funding. If you work for a large company that uses open source software, you have an obligation to support the underlying infrastructure. So let's talk about how we can get started. So the first step, find a project. Better way to say it, find the right project for you. So stick with what you know. And I know like these big name projects like Django, Pandas, they're gonna look great on your resume. But if you're just starting off, it might be good to just start with a little smaller project. And GitHub's a great resource to get started with that. So once you're looking at projects, check out the project README file. So there you'll find information about the project. You'll find instructions on how to install the library, set up a development environment. And most of these READMEs also have contribution guidelines on how you can get started. Take a look at how actively maintained the project is. So you can look at the number of open issues, the number of open pull requests. It's a really good way to judge how active the maintainers keep track of that project. And I know Pandas looks like it has a lot, but everybody's always involved. Just a really big project. So once you've found a project, check out the issue tracker to see what kind of issues they have that you can help out with. An increasing number of projects are using the good first issue tag in order to identify issues that are good for beginners to get started with. You should ask the contributors on how you can actually get started, what issues you should work on. They have Slack channels, IRC. This is a picture of Gitter, which is Slack for GitHub repos. And I highly recommend attending conference sprint sessions. So some conferences have an extended session where developers stay afterwards and hack on open source software together. And this is a really great environment to get started. You have project maintainers there to like hold your hand and help you make your first pull request. You don't even have to be there in person. A lot of these sprints have IRC channels, Slack channels, Gitter channels. So just some tips I picked up on making a successful PR. I made a few PRs, didn't get merged, but here's what I learned. Hopefully this can help you out. So you should try to write clean code that's readable. And like code is read a lot more times than it's written, and readability counts for a lot. I think it's one of the things in the Zen of Python. If you're just getting started, you want to know how to write better code, I really recommend the book Code Complete. it leveled up my software engineering skill set so much. Before you submit your pull request, you should go ahead and take some time to describe the change you made. Sure, the person can go through your code to figure out exactly what you did, but it's a lot easier if you just remove all that guesswork and tell them what you did. Write tests. If you don't write tests for your code, it's broken by design, so people aren't probably going to accept it. You should try to adhere to the project philosophy. So I recently got a change merged into Kenneth Wright's Maya library, and the tagline for that library is date and time for humans. So as you know, Kenneth Wright's created the request library. That has a really simple interface. So he's sort of known for this great, simple API design, and Maya is not an exception. So when I went to go make a change, I had two options. I can either add a time zone parameter, where it's like, I'm just having one single parameter, or I can add a keyword argument catch-all. And since I know Kenneth Wright prefers cleaner APIs, I made the decision to just add that single parameter. Then I added a short example with the new parameter, and then my request got merged. With all of this said, I really wouldn't be giving you the full story if I didn't talk about some of the downsides to contributing. Yes, sometimes people can be jerks, but you shouldn't let jerks get you down. Contributing to open source helps you, it helps the community. Don't let them win. So with that said, a lot of projects are taking up code of conducts. So this is just guidelines on what kind of behavior is acceptable and what kind of behavior is not acceptable. Pandas added one on Friday, so we're really excited about that. We also have to deal with imposter syndrome. Sometimes we think that we're not good enough. Like, what can we do? Like, how is our change going to make a difference? But honestly, like, think of yourself 6 months ago and think of yourself now. Could you do the same thing 6 months ago? As long as you're constantly learning, constantly getting better, it's like there's no task that you can't do. So here's just more additional resources on how you can get started. Now you guys have all the tools. Go forth and conquer the world. If you do make a pull request, please reach out to me. Let me know. I want to hear about it. Find me on Twitter. Get me at Chippy. I'm on Slack. Let me know. So thanks everybody for your time. I will take your questions. The question was, is there a good way to bug the person to accept your pull request? So normally I just send one out. If I haven't got a response within a week, I just ping them with like an @ their username. So I know they got it. And if they ignore me, I guess maybe a month later. So just play it by ear. Yeah. Yes?
Are you going to put your slides on your GitHub?
My slides are going to be on my GitHub. Yes. So the question was, do you have any recommendations for finding a mentor? Honestly, I don't, but I do know that the Beware project is always looking for first-time contributors, and they really help you out getting started. So I would start with that project. Anybody else? All right, thanks everybody.